welcome to another design stream. It's been over a month since I've done one of these, and I am joined today by one of the writers for MythCraft, Gregory Wonderland,
What up?
a published novelist, among other things. So it's Litanies of the Lost Star, right? That's the series?
That's the series name? Yeah, the book itself is called The Soul of Chaos, so there's a nice plug for you.
Excellent. Yeah, so go check that out. I have been meaning to buy it, and it's been on my to purchase list, and I will do that shortly. Anyway,
okay.
we're here to design. We're here to design the Curseblade fighter or warrior, because we're doing a MythCraft stream. This will be available in both systems. And I'm sorry, restart my beginning. Oh, I started halfway through my beginning. I'm sorry, everyone. Hello, welcome to a design stream.
We're here. What's up?
We're here with Gregory Wonderland, one of our MythCraft writers. Gregory and I will be working through designing the Curseblade warrior for MythCraft. We will be this will be available both for the warrior class in MythCraft and the fighter class in 5th edition D&D. We're just going to do the MythCraft version for this design stream, but both will be available for playtesting this Friday, along with a whole lot of other stuff. So super excited for that. Just in case the plug cut out, I'll go ahead and say again, The Soul of Chaos, book 1 of Litanies of the Lost Star. That is Gregory's very own novel. It's the only one published so far, right?
The only one. Right? I really appreciate you going back and putting the plug in there, because that is, of course, the thing that would get cut out.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, Gregory, do you want to say anything else to introduce yourself, or do you want to just jump in?
I don't really have much. I guess I got a little bit. Hi, I play a lot of. I've been running 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons for 25 years, because I'm a giant nerd. I have a bunch of design experience, and I just recently started working on MythCraft, and it's a blast. Let me tell you, even if I'm not really that good at it. So please do not judge me too much, people. I'm here to help. That's it. Just want you to have some fun.
And where can we follow you? Andy is insistent.
Oh man, that's right.
Twitter,
I'm sorry. Thank you, Andy,
Facebook.
for being a proficient social media person. Every time I do something like this, people are like, "Okay, but dude, where are you?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." If you want to find anything that I do, including other design work and books and stuff, I have a website. It's just gregorywonderland.com. It's my full name. Put the .com on there. It takes you to all of my stuff, TTRPG books, and of course social media and whatnot.
Excellent. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Glad to see so many of you in chat already. So to get started, before we, so you've outlined quite a bit of this class already, but we're kind of taking it from the pencil stage to the ink stage, if this were like a visual art piece. So just based on kind of the outline you've worked on so far, what's like the aesthetic of this class track? What kind of vibes, what kind of powers should we expect?
So I made sure to outline this so I didn't look like a total moron live on stream, right? It's like, what are words? So generally what we're going for when you're doing the cursed blade here, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? They have a cursed blade of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be a blade. It could in fact be a cursed maul, if you want to go that direction. But we're going for someone that kind of very heavily relies on weapon usage, warrior, but also has some kind of supernatural connection to that weapon. And that weapon itself is more of not so much a sentient weapon, but a creature or a being of some kind that's been trapped or intentionally put inside of this weapon to give it this kind of one-up on different supernatural creatures. So it's going to be more of a martial class that leans into more of the supernatural casty side and trying to get those things to be synergistic with each other.
So to compare it to already existing classes or subclasses in 5th edition, just because almost everyone is familiar with that, would you say this is closer to like a Hexblade or an Eldritch Knight. Obviously, the lore is a little bit different, but aesthetically,
if you were to mix Eldritch Knight and a Hexblade together under the Warlock class, that's probably what you'd be looking at here.
Okay.
It's not going to be, so it has a very influence of occult in there because, I mean, think of what we're designing this for. A little bit of dark fantasy in there, but very much I'm trying to open it up a little bit, or at least we are, to other options. Because, you know, when you make a class or a subclass, you don't want to necessarily, or at least I try not to do this, pigeonhole it so specifically that you have to play it this way every single time. So opening that up a little bit and giving it some various options. So it would be a combination of those two to actually answer the question that you asked me. Oh man, I'm so good at that.
Awesome. All right, well, let's jump in. I know, like, you've already written. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so I don't know like how fully drafted some of the different talents are. But you can go ahead and start copying, start writing. I will just monitor. Feel free as we're going through this chat to make suggestions, to make like idea pitches, anything you want to, provided that one, if I see it, if Gregory sees it, and we end up taking it, that you're fine with that. So don't make a suggestion if you want to save it for your own like homebrew subclass that you do at some point. If you put it in chat, it's fair game. 2, don't put it in chat if you don't want to see it like picked out a little bit. Like if you suggest an idea and then we kind of get under the hood and mess with some of the numbers and stuff, like many of you have done this before, just looking at chat, looking at who's here, so you know the drill. Just like by all means contribute. I'd love to see whatever ideas you come up with. I will not steal any of Andy's ideas unless Andy puts them in the chat.
All be stolen.
Right. But yeah, like there's no guarantee that we're going to use something that you say, but there's also no guarantee that we're not going to use something you say. So just like approach it with that kind of like collaborative spirit in mind. I doubt that's true. I think everyone has good ideas. Sometimes it takes multiple iterations before you arrive at that good idea. Yagidon, Jojidon. Sorry, I don't know how to say your name.
Joe Geddon. I'm going with Joe Geddon.
Joe Geddon. All right.
An Armageddon.
All right, so we've got some references up here for page numbers. I should have grabbed my book. It's in the other room now.
Yeah, that's something I'll definitely say for design advice. If you are designing something and you are not completely 1,000,000,000% familiar with the source material, do yourself a huge favor and write down page numbers, man, because that'll save you so much time flipping back and forth between books and PDFs.
Looking at the document here, what kind of in the MythCraft system, there are different kinds of like class tracks that are like, I mean, they're not hard and fast rules, but they're good ways to think about like what kind of subclass or what kind of class track you're creating. So like a linear class track is just you take one talent and then that unlocks the next talent, that unlocks the next talent, and you just go down a straight line. That'd be like the soldier warrior. You just get better at soldiering. You're more proficient with weapons and with like tactics. And then contrast that with what's a good example of a menu? The I'm blanking. I know we have several really good menus. The menu
every time. Every time it happens, we're just like, oh man, look at these menu classes. You're like, wait, what? What words? What happened?
Right. Exactly.
Did I write this system or the Archmage, right? That's very
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So you you take the first talent that puts you on like the track of becoming an Archmage, or an Archmage, but you choose which like function of magic. In D&D, that'd be like the 8 schools of magic. You choose which one of those you improve upon, and you're not locked into that. Like you're able to bounce around and do multiple of them and just slowly improve at like abjuration or in MythCraft warding, whatever it might be based on the system. The Tomekeeper Aurora, the Tomekeeper Troubadour is like, it looks like a menu because it's got a bunch of different like options that you choose. But once you choose from that menu, then you're locked into like a miniature linear track based on that selection. So that's kind of a hybrid. It has elements of both. What kind of track do you anticipate the Curseblade being?
I'm a big fan of menus and then menus with splits, right? So you combine them. So you got like an initial split, and then from that split, you got like a nice little menu, and then your nice little menu then splits again into like kind of like more like a Letty kind of design. That's what I've been trying to do since I've entered MythCraft, because it feels like there's just so much cool interplay you can do with like forcing people to mix talents. And you can do this cool thing that I've noticed where you can kind of like multi-class within your own class. Which I'm a huge fan of. That's like my biggest design just dream of be able to do kind of whatever you want, but in the flavor of what you're doing. So that's kind of my goal here with that, is to do exactly that. So I want to give you like multiple splits you can take to make your Curseblade like as versatile as possible, but still keep it in that same vein. So each split is going to lead to a progressive talent overall that, does what you should be doing. Which again is a very long answer to a very simple question.
I mean, we are writers. That's what we do.
Yeah, right. We don't.
Yes or no? Well, let me tell you.
Here's so many explanations. By the way, have you ever read The Republic? Let's go. Yeah, right.
All right. Well, let's dig in. Let's get into it. Curseblade.
Okay.
Prerequisites for your entry.
Again, not wanting to look like a fool, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste some of these things right here. So like, bam, text out of nowhere. Look at that.
Whoa.
Yeah, right? Like it showed up. So this is kind of the way that I did Curseblade here. It's the longest talent you will see in this one. But it's like that for a reason, because everything essentially builds off of what you do in the very first entry talent, which most of the trees work like that. But this one can be a little bit more complex, or at least in the pitch. So kind of what you have here as in the initial entry is I have you choosing a tag that is also a magic source. And the reason for that is that represents the kind of spirit that you have in your blade, or again, whatever weapon, because this first talent essentially gives you a weapon that has that spirit captured inside of it. The first thing you're doing is deciding the tag, whether you want to go down an arcane, occult, or primal route, which is the type of spirit that you have. And you get some very minor like bonuses for that initially. So you get a resist 2 against basically the tag as far as that goes, because you have that creature. So it would be a bit more resistant against it. And then, of course, your weapon gets a unique starting property. So these are the initial base properties, and most of them give you some kind of strange sort of mystic blade thing, right? These aren't things that you could just learn to do as a warrior. These are things that you need like divine influence for, or rather supernatural. So you have a list of these basic properties that you're going to get to choose one of them when you take this entry talent, and you'll be able to choose more later. So you'll be able to build on the type of weapon that you're constructing as you have like full control over it. So that's kind of our initial entry here. So you can kind of look at these and you can kind of see what they do. So for instance, balanced gets rid of the unwieldy trait. So if you just want to have something that's ridiculous to wield, you can just do that without an issue. I believe unwieldy costs more AP action points, for those of you not familiar, to actually unsheathe your weapon. So this lets you get it out faster and treat it like it was.
Yeah, it also unwieldy also interacts with encumbrance, so you can only like carry a certain number of unwieldy things before you're like unable to fight without dropping some of them.
Right. So this will let you pursue your anime character dreams and be able to have a ridiculous amount of weapons on you at any one time, which should interfere with how you fight. But you know what? It's a game and we don't care. So that's kind of what you're looking at with these. This ability here literally allows you to dual wield with your weapon by creating an offhand version of it, essentially. That lets you like scale that as well as your initial weapon. This one, it lets you have a little bit more or gives light property to a weapon that normally wouldn't have it, giving you like a cool one-up as far as that goes. And you can kind of see that down the line. And of course, we have the classic returning property where you throw your weapon at somebody way over there, and then you can bring it back to your hand for anything else.
I think half hand is the one I would go for. Being able to get like the two-handed, but just with one, that's really cool.
Yeah, I love hand and a half swords. Like that's my like historical jam. So I was like, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah. I've got some questions in chat. Gonna distill them down to a specific question. What do how does it work if you infuse a magic weapon with a spirit?
Thank you so much for asking that question. I think this is actually something I needed to run by Nathan because, again, my proficiency isn't quite where I'd like it to be, where I can just give you an offhanded answer of like, well, that's not broken at all. So, what I wanted to be able to do is for you to take these spirits and to put it in new weapons, right? Like have a ritual. But then the thought that occurred to me was, oh no, what if someone gets the most broken weapon in the game and then makes it stronger,
Right.
absolutely breaking it. So I think with the initial design of this, I was going on towards the side of absolutely not. But that's actually something I'd like to hear you chime in on here, Nathan, because you have a lot more expertise there, more than I do.
Yeah, so the challenge is, and the different things that I weigh as I think about that question is, how early in the game are you likely to take, like, let's assume you're going straight for this. You're not multi-classing and coming back to this later.
Mm-hmm.
You could get this ability, this talent by level 3. Level 1, you're just an adventurer. Level 2, you take the warrior entry, and then level 3, you take Curseblade. Typically, you're unlikely to have a magic weapon at that point. Obviously, there's exceptions, like in Veil of the Eternal Night, we've got the legacy artifacts that some people may start with. So that does depend on the game you're running. My inclination is to have some kind of like gate or threshold that you have to hit within this track that ties to in 5th edition the rarity, or in MythCraft the essence point cost of a magic item. So I don't know exactly what talent this would look like. I'd need to see more of the track before I can throw out like a specific number. But
Okay.
let's say like the 4th or 5th talent in this track lets you infuse your spirit into a weapon with essence cost 20 or lower, 15 or lower.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the 8th talent might say, okay, now it can be 25 or lower, 30 or lower. That's probably how I would do that, because that reflects your growing ability within the Curseblade track to speak with, to work with the spirits that you're infusing into these weapons. You get better not just at wielding the weapon itself, but also at like negotiating with like the cursed entity living inside it. Yeah. So I mean, this is what happens when you get two writers
maybe,
talking.
right?
The answer is maybe.
So the answer is maybe. Let's see how it goes. I think that's exactly right. I think we just have to see how the other abilities stack up and see if that would be terribly broken. Now, I did see, a quick question of somebody asking, no, Holy Avengers level 3. Yeah, absolutely not. Good. I mean, if your DM wants to let you, or your Mythcrafter in this case, of course, you can tell how much 5e I'm involved with. Then hey, that's your game, right? Do what you want to do. I did see a question. Someone asked about what about Sundering as far as the weapon goes, and this weapon would count as a magic weapon. So I think that might be handled in like the magic weapon rules. But yeah, that ritual question we were just talking about might actually solve that as well. So we'll see if that's something we actually need to get into, at least as far as things go. I think sometimes with design, people can get bogged down a little bit with answering all of the questions at the start. And the issue you get with that is that everything that you designed before you started designing is going to probably go out the window. So if I try and answer all those questions before I start making the first talent, I'm eventually going to wind up being like, oh, well, that was all not used, so let's just do it in. So sometimes it helps to just have that base outline and then improv off of that as you're doing work.
Yeah. I usually write maybe 120% of the talents that I end up actually keeping. I'll think of different ideas. Some of them are worth keeping and like boiling down and mixing with something else. Some of them are not worth keeping, but yeah. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah. The ultimate kill your darlings, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
So this is going to be the first side, so menu track that you can take with Curseblade. So if you have a visual, this would be going like down and to like the left. I think that's probably showed as the right for all of you guys though. So don't think I'm that much of an idiot. The camera's mirrored. So the first one that has is a very simple sort of, hey, like you have a magic weapon and you want this weapon to scale with your level. This is something that I find to be really important in games, is things that scale upward, because if you start with this magic super weapon that you're going to be customizing, you want it to be as good, or at least stand up to the other weapons that your party members are coming across just because they killed a dude and looted his corpse, right? Just a very harsh way of saying got loot. So really simply, the first talent here is when wielded specifically by you, because your spirit doesn't like anybody else. The Curseblade grants just that +1 to attack rolls and damage. Like very simple, very easy. Hey, we should probably get this out of the way.
And some nice utility that it's only with you, as opposed to just like a generic +1 sword.
Yeah, so like anybody else that picks this up, they're gonna be like, why are you using the sword all the time?
Yeah.
Until something starts yelling at them and they drop it. You're like, yeah, there's an asshole in there, so you probably should let me deal with it. Which is always some of my favorite role playing, right? Of like flavoring what actually happens here.
Yeah.
That last question in the chat, yes. So you have a weapon, and then it gets stronger as you go. You can basically give it abilities and enhance it. There is a feature later that'll let you change the weapon, though, so you can actually change your mind on as far as like the regular weapon you're using. So let's move on then. So this is where the first split within a split happens, because Inception is such a good movie. It's not sarcasm. I actually love Inception. Christopher Nolan is the shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one after Imbued Blade, which just gives you your initial magic ability. Next up, you're going to have what I christened as Spirit Blade, because we're going with a theme here. So this just gives you an ability, and that ability is, I'm not sure if it's broken or not. We'll figure it out here. That's why we've got Nathan with us. But what this does is this allows you to choose a separate defense other than standard attacking someone with your blade. And while you have this ability activated, you get to choose a different defense. Now, you can only choose this defense once. So once you take it, that's the defense you roll against. But say, for instance, you're like, hey, I want to attack somebody's reflex. Then you can choose for that minute to attack that score instead of somebody's like physical armor.
Yeah, that's really cool. I knee-jerk. I do not think that that's busted. That's part of what playtesting is for. Starting this Friday, you can play this. But no, I think that's a really cool, unique, interesting ability, right? I imagine some point later on that becomes 2 per recoup, or it becomes regain 1 on a recoup, something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna, like I said, I try to scale absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So Spirit Blade, and then here's where the split is, and I'll tease the curse magic here, the tag that I will be explaining later as we get into that. But the next one you're going to have, and this is a split off of Imbued Blade. So it actually gives, you can either take both, or you can focus more into one and get down the line a little bit sooner. But the next one on the next page down is Imbued Force. Now, what this does is it satisfies that primal urge to deal more damage, because who doesn't want to play a fighter and deal damage? And this does it in my favorite way. It adds a specific damage type. So this actually starts to immediately play off of the tag that you chose for your spirit. So if you have an arcane spirit, you can choose to either do cold or fire damage. Occult lets you do necrotic or toxic, and primal lets you do corrosive or lightning. So this is very similar into Spirit Blade, in that you activate it for an AP cost, and then it lasts for put that in there. Yeah, it should last for 1 minute. So I do need to remember to actually include the 1 minute in there, as opposed to just apparently forever.
Again, playtesting will catch that. Someone will make a build that just like infinite scales it.
Your Curseblade for 1 minute. There we go. Nailed it. Okay. All right, then. And then we have to remember that this Curseblade here is currently not a proper noun. It's just a noun. So for those of you who care about grammar, which is no one, that's just a lookout for you guys. So you have your extra damage track, and you can already see here that you have to kind of pick, right? Like, okay, do I want Spirit Blade or do I want Imbued Force? And you can take both, but it'll kind of slow down your progression a little bit, which is a little design tactic to force players to kind of go one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And then Next one is you start having these splits, and then we're back into a single talent, which is Imbued Blade 2, which requires you to have only taken one of the previous 2 talents. So what this does is this allows you to further customize your initial weapon, right? So at this point,
nice.
You choose an additional base property. So by now, you can have some ridiculous amalgamation of
an overreach unwieldy weapon, or an overreach hand and a half that's now a 1. Yeah, there's a lot of
your range. Yeah, your reach is now like 20 feet with your great axe, right? You're just like, how does that work? I don't know.
And
but
a formerly unwieldy weapon that now returns every time you throw it.
Yeah. So you have this crazy, like, strange weapon. It is every impractical fantasy weapon or anything you've ever seen, right? Like imbued into this kind of class. That one's pretty easy. This also does benefit from one additional bonus, which essentially gets you better at killing the thing that your blade is. So mechanics are one of my favorite things with mechanics is have them inform role playing or vice versa. So this one, it kind of implies that you're getting to know the spirit in your blade and how to kill it. So you're like getting a lot better at taking out these creatures at this point. So that represents just +1 crit rating against creatures that share the tag of your spirit in your blade. Let's speed up the talents down here a little bit faster.
Before we do, Maiko is wanting to know, with Imbued Force, could you theoretically activate it like twice at the same time?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, let's say like.
Is that? Go ahead. Yeah. So like, is that something? Would that be? I think it would be super broken this early, right? Like that extra 2d4 murder.
Well, the thing is, if you did that, then it effectively becomes 1 per rest because you're using both uses of it, and it's also 4 AP to figure that out. So that's like your entire turn at a low level.
So you can just like Super Saiyan charge up.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think that's broken. Let's say that's fine.
Yeah. Do we want to add a caveat here that you can use? Yeah, let's just not put a restriction.
I don't think it. Yeah, just don't put a restriction on it.
That's perfect. Yeah, like I have no issue with that. I think that's awesome. You just like you're about to fight some evil demon thing, and your Curseblade's over in the corner, staring them down, like waiting. You're like, what is he doing? It's like, don't worry, it's gonna be good.
And of course, the extra reach from your overreach ability comes from video game style slash lines that are 5 feet out in front of the player.
Yeah, absolutely. Hitboxes, man. You just gotta get to them. Okay, sorry, I was like almost swallowed some ice. That would have been great on stream. Okay, so let's get down this extra here because we're going down the blade, the enhancing your blade kind of branch of this track right now. So you can see this diamond form taking shape again. So we just did Imbued Blade 2, which then gives us access to Spirit Blade and Imbued Force upgrades. So this is actually where you get exactly where you suggested before, Nathan. And now you have an additional, every time you recoup, which is not quite a long rest, not quite taking a breath, you gain 1 extra use of this ability. So you actually can like keep using it throughout the day as opposed to one and you're done pretty much. So these also come with some added benefits as far as they go. So Spirit Blade, at this point, you get the extra use, but you also get an additional defense that you can target with Spirit Blade. So you know that this creature has a high AR, it's got a high reflex, but now you have the ability to attack its will defense with your strikes, so you can beat it down and break it. And it further kind of enhances your capability of murdering something that is of your creature's type. So this Spirit Blade version throws a bit of a bone to you if you prefer the Spirit Blade over the Imbued Force, because you're not doing as much damage and it's pretty specific, but it does give you like a little bit of extra as far as that goes. And then jumping down to the Imbued Force does the same thing with a recoup, and then you're looking at damage increase because, of course. And then you also get access to your other damage source, right? So let's say, oh crap, like this thing is immune to toxic. Now that ability is completely useless. Now you can switch over to your necrotic damage and do some extra to it.
Oh, okay, I see. And then, so if they were to, like, if we went with Maiko's idea and activated both, like, cold and fire at the same time, would you then be able to double up the fire? or double up the cold if you needed to for that flexibility?
So this is where I think it might get a little hazy as far. No, I don't really know. I don't think 2d6 is much more of a massive increase over 2d4, right? And it is still something you could only do once. You would have to recoup twice before you could do that again.
Yeah, it's still gated by your recovery time.
So again, it's something that I'm fine with as a designer. But yeah, I think you could probably I think this would be more to your MythCrafter at this point to say yes or no to this, just because of the balance of their particular game and how it works. But I would be fine as a designer being like, yeah, you have both damage sources, so you can use fire and cold to get some icy hot action going on.
I agree, especially with the the big thing for me is like not handing out too much power without like some kind of recharge mechanic, and I think that that allows that kind of gameplay. And yeah, to answer playtest till it breaks. Hello, David and David. I would agree with Tazcapi on this one. The trade-off that you're getting is you're getting that extra damage, but still for a shorter amount of time, as opposed to keeping the same amount of damage but for twice as long.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I love on like big important enemies. Or you get overrun and all of a sudden you have to be like, oh god, I need to do something, and that lets you do that. So I'm a big fan of that as well. We also have, this is where you get, it's just a slight off branch here from the choices that you have, and I included this ability for the people stuck with their weapon, right? I hate being stuck with something that I'm not really having a good time playing. So this is the morphing ability, essentially allows you to do a ritual that just changes the weapon into something new. It also allows you to change the base properties. Very obviously, if you're changing from a great axe to a dagger, you're probably not going to have the same properties on there, right? Because it doesn't make too much sense. So this allows you to reassign that and let your blade kind of change or weapon change, not only depending on your preference, but also your situation. If you're about to fight a golem, right, and it's like a sword, sometimes you wish you had a maul on you.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I imagine like, again, that kind of informs the roleplay. You're getting to know the spirit better. The spirit is morphing to like your commands more holistically. It reminds me of, I have not played this game, but so my only exposure to this character is from Smash Bros. But Corrin and the way Corrin's like sword spear shield thing morphs as they're doing their like fighting abilities. And let's see, Dantis. I imagine it will. Dantis Virgil is asking like if the specific spirit, when you kill a certain kind of creature, that spirit is like, if it's the same kind of creature as them, the same kind of tag as them, if they're able to like generate like shield HP and that kind of stuff.
So that's actually something I definitely wanted to go down. I didn't have enough time to fully map the other branch we're going to see, but I think that'll play into what you're looking for as far as that goes. Because again, big fan as well as it like consuming of the like. So let's see if we can get there. Right now, let's go to the next diamond shape. Now this again plays off of your last imbued blade. Oh no, I actually skipped that one. Hold on, that's morphing, and then oh no, what happened to you, imbued blade?
Imbued blade 2 is.
It's fine. My dyslexia kicked in there, and I was like, words.
Yeah.
I actually copied the exact thing I needed. So Imbued Blade is, of course, the next thing that you need right here. So this moves off of here. Now, I did try to gate this a little bit more at character level by requiring you to have 7 Curseblade talents by this point. Just because that +2 to attack and damage. This seems to be across the board. I think there's a Zealot track that has basically an empowered weapon, and this is the same level they get that out as well. A very simple, very easy kind of talent that's strong enough by itself to not warrant any additional abilities. But that, of course, branches off into, we have our Spirit Blade, and of course the next talent down, Imbued Force here. So again, just another increased step with Spirit Blade. Now we get a lot more uses of our Spirit Blade, which here, actually, this is something I liked doing. I don't know if this is like jams with MythCraft, but it's something I appreciate, is that your actual stat that you get your recharges off of is based on something you're likely to have as this kind of character. So if you have an arcane spirit, it actually is based off of your int, primal awareness, and of course, occult charisma, which is what their magic sources uses for their spellcasting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it kind of forces you to differentiate based off of that spirit. And you get a little, you get TA when you share the same tag with your spirit, you get better at killing that thing. So just a little extra ability on top of that. Whew, okay, words. Next up, go ahead.
Benjamin asks, as Nightborn are summoned creatures, can a Nightborn be both the spirit and the wielder, empowering its own weapon? Quick lore correction that has happened since our Kickstarter. What exactly a Nightborn has shifted a little bit as we're working on like drafting the lore. So what the spirit that like a Hellcrafter would pull out of hell and like be a Devil Forge Master kind of like concept, right? They pull a spirit out of hell and imbue it into a body. That's just called a Hellspawn now instead of a Nightborn. Nightborn is something else that is a little bit spoilery, so I'm not going to like get into it here. But to answer that question in regards to Hellcrafter, like Hellspawn, let's say you're like Fly's Eyes from the Castlevania anime. Could you also be the same spirit that is in the weapon? My inclination as a designer from a lore perspective is to say canonically no, but like you're MythCrafter and you should do what you want to, right? Like that's my inclination. I'm curious what your thought is on that, Gregory.
I'm proud of the same thing. I also have a cat that decided to show up and start walking over everything. Of course, what else is going to happen? Oh, there's some tail action going on. Cat? Serious? Every time, man, he's like, he can't not stop. Anyway, but yeah, so I'm actually of the same idea as far as that goes. The a lot of that kind of stuff, that's something you want to kind of leave open for your game master to figure out specifically, just because there's so much. You don't want to restrict that, because if someone really wants to do it, sometimes if you put that in a rules section, whoever's running your game will take that very seriously, and it will take away from like the actual game itself. So I think if you want to do that, sure, why not? It's a really cool idea. But as far as, I don't think we want to put that in the actual design work.
Right. And Aurora is just like loving the idea of morphing the weapons back and forth. So like you're out on the battlefield, you've got like a sword, and then you go into a political situation and you quickly turn it into a dagger so you can conceal it.
That's actually, you're going to like one of these talents coming up in that case, because that just commits even more. So let's go to the Imbued Force first, because you said the next Spirit one, Imbued Force 3, essentially is, let's do some damage, boy. So this one, thinking about it, we may actually have to put a cap on this one now, right? Because this lets you use Imbued Force a lot more times, and maybe having additional 5d8 points of damage on every hit is going to be a little bit more of an impact. So the previous question of, hey, do we stack this for the former versions? Probably. I don't have an issue with, but now we actually get into a broken design problem where we would have to force a limiter on that to prevent you from doing it. At least, what's your opinion?
No, I agree with you, because otherwise this runs the risk of trivializing a boss encounter, for example.
Right.
Yeah, so what would it be? 2 AP to activate. So
we could do, at this point, a scaling AP cost, which might make it basically impossible, or something you can only do at higher levels to like force it to go. So you could have any use beyond the second increases the AP cost by another 2 AP or like another 4 AP. So essentially you could Nova, but it requires you to actually have enough AP to do that. So it gives it kind of like a soft cap.
Yeah, but what I'm weighing with that is the added complexity that it takes to track that versus the return on adding that complexity. It's like my initial reaction was to just say like you can only activate Imbued Force twice at one time, or you can only have 2 instances active at a time. So you could even overlap a little bit and like activate one, 30 seconds later activate the second one, 30 seconds later activate the third one, because the first one has worn off. But yeah, I like the AP idea as well, but let's go with the 2 instances for now, just to keep things from spiraling too far, and like all the different variables and the different levers that we have to pull right now.
Okay. That's perfect. That works for me. It gives us the hard limiter, and it wasn't even possible before now, but now so it makes sense to put it into the talent to kind of allow that to happen. Okay. That's an easy, I think, simple fix that you can kind of be creative with. Okay. So that's an easy solution. Thank you, chat. Always a big hand there. Now, this is going to be a quick one, but this is going to build off of what we were just talking about with the different daggers. So this is another branch off of Imbued Blade 3. So it requires morphing 1, but it has like a little side section that you can kind of go down. What this lets you do is, of course, morph your weapon now instead of every hour, because it requires a full ritual to do it. At this point, you can just do it. As long as you have 4 AP, you can turn your weapon into basically whatever you want in that moment.
Nice.
Now,
yes, on the math and the averages, that's right, but it's capping it at 2d8, not a 1d8, so it's still an improvement on the previous 2d4.
Right, absolutely. You can still activate them at the same time.
Yeah.
So this morphing is what we've got here. Now, I did leave this intentionally vague into any weapon as opposed to any melee weapon. That is a huge distincting factor right there, right? Because you can turn it into a heavy repeating crossbow if that's something you just happen to find.
Right.
And that would be a little bit weird, but that also would require you to carry around ammunition randomly for that weapon at a time. So I when I was making this, I was like, yeah, that'd be fine, because it would be very strange for you to just have like a quarrel of bolts just available at any given moment. Unless that was just very like specific. And I was saying that, and you could see, I don't know if you could see my eyes, but I was like, would that mean they could turn it into a ballista or a cannon or a catapult? I was like, oh man. Do siege weapons have the siege tag? Is that something that would save it right there? Like you're actually looking up.
Yeah.
Quick, go to the source material. Can I turn this into a catapult?
How are they defined? A siege weapon.
So one of my favorite things is the sudden rustling of pages very quickly.
Yeah.
God, shit. Yeah, I'm searching.
I see the dilemma. Like I found it, but it doesn't, like, they're written almost as like monster stat blocks instead of as like weapon entries.
So they are just siege equipment. They're not classified under the weapon category. So I think we're safe as far as terminology goes. You have a reason character.
I concur with that, because it's yeah, they're under the equipment category in the core rulebook. They're listed very deliberately as like, this is what they can do within the MythCrafters Guide. So I think we're safe with that distinction.
How perfect would that be? You walk into your dinner date, and you've got a knife, and suddenly there's just a trebuchet just chilling in the middle of this room. Like, what is that? Oh man, you ever needed a portable battering ram? Anyway, yeah. So any weapon, mostly thinking about melee and range. I'm fine with that as a designer. I think that gives you a little bit more mobility too, especially because if you're just constantly like over there and all of your enemies are always over there, being able to turn it into a bow or something would help out a lot.
Yeah, I added that caveat. That was a good recommendation from Maiko and Dante's Virgil. Just like one-handed, hand and a half, or two-handed. That way it's mechanically obvious.
Perfect. All right, yes, let's go ahead and do that.
And I'm sure someone will ask, why not just say any weapon? And the answer is
like,
so that it's not a mangonel.
Because you know what? Sometimes, really, what is a weapon though? Like we can.
Yeah, I can't turn it into a diseased cow.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, well, technically, that can murder some people. Dudes walking around with a howitzer in medieval ages. Okay, yeah, great. So thank you again, chat. We've got some amazing input here for design that works out really well. So then after that, we're moving up here along to the next Imbued Blade feature. So this pulls off of the Imbued Force and Spirit Blade 3. And what you've got here is just kind of a middle range capstone, and kind of something that really like gives your capabilities as a character something like unique or something really cool. And so at this point, you get just a little bit of here's some extra resistance for your for having have been with your spirit for this long. But the important one with this are the abilities, which are all 2 per rest, which may need an upgrade or not really sure. But these give you kind of acts as a warrior to really capitalize on the kind of energy that you have access to as far as a blade goes. Now, this is a bit basic, and they're all pretty simple here, but it's essentially, hey, like I'm surrounded by a bunch of dudes and it's time for them all to die. And so you get access to kind of these. So Whirling Dervish is the first one, which is exactly what I just said, kind of explodes in a radius around you and does additional damage. This might be a bit too strong, sure, otherwise. But it does, again, another extra damage based off of your spirit and which stat they draw off of. The rest of these are pretty similar. Explosive Burst is a cone that if you get to make a free extra attack that can knock something prone if it hits. And then Scything Blow is just a line attack, essentially, where you choose a dude all the way over there, and it will beam blast through whoever is between you and them, and they also take that damage as well.
Yeah. The Scything Blow's range currently is the same as the Explosive Burst, so currently
my bad.
it is weaker than that.
30.
Yeah. Okay, okay, that makes more sense then. Yeah,
right.
like with 3 different right. Now, mechanically and from a lore perspective, the Searing Beam of Energy seems to me distinctly different from the others, because like the Whirling Dervish and Explosive Burst, I imagine you could flavor that as just like you running around rapidly in a circle, right? You could flavor that as your spirit doing almost like a sword burst cantrip kind of effect. But the flavor is very specific with Scything Blow. Is that intentional?
Not really. Honestly, I was just trying to find a cool way to say a line attack.
Okay.
So this could be you throwing your sword through a bunch of dudes 30 feet. If that's a problem, I think that's a pretty easy fix. Mostly when I was designing it, it was kind of trying to do the difference between a radius, a cone, and a line.
Yeah,
as far as
I mean,
different differences.
What I would do personally, if I were like wanting to use the Scything Blow ability, is I would say like at the end of those 30 feet, you like teleport down that line and you attack each creature of your choice along that line.
Gotcha. Okay, so you got that. That thrown weapon.
So there's
kind of situation.
Right. And then like the player can say, okay, so I'm actually like creating this beam and then teleporting with my weapon, or I'm like Aragorning my way down the line, like ducking and slashing as I go.
Okay.
Yeah, that just makes it feel a little bit more in keeping with the theming of the first two. Yeah, a speed slash attack.
Okay, so let's do this here. Another trick when you're designing: always reuse language you've already written.
Yep,
it'll save you so much editing time.
Yep.
Or we'll add a lot because you've copied the same typo 1,500 times. Haven't done that before. So now this would just be adding flavor at this point, because the ability is written without any flavor right now. So that kind of just gives you the axis of what it does. So
the mechanic that it adds is you end at the, or you move to the end of the line.
Right. Okay. What, as this attack resolves at the end of this attack?
At the end of this attack.
Yeah, that specific technical language is the worst part about writing in this. Teleport. Why is it so much harder to write things when people are watching you write them? Come on.
Yeah, I'm like in the zone, and then my brother will come up, or my wife will come up, and I'll just like freeze.
Okay, write that one at the end of it, and just be like, takes your weapon's normal damage. Blah blah blah. Teleports to the original target.
Yeah.
Of the, what do you say, line?
I would say of the attack.
Of the attack. Okay. Repeating language drives me nuts, but you know what? There's nothing clearer, right?
Right.
There. Okay. So now we have something to give it like a little bit of an extra cool reposition on top of an attack. Okay. If that's good, I think it's time to move on. You got to remember that there are people and chats happening.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next talent here, which is another big one, a big chonker, because now we're getting into some advanced levels. So we want to make things like a little bit more interesting for you when you're advancing down this branch. So the next one that we're looking at is advanced property. Now this basically just plays off of the base properties before, only you get to add a cooler kind of more brutal property to your weapon as it's kind of advanced in power.
Nice.
So these are much more supernatural in their origins. So we started with draining, which allows you to essentially hit somebody and take their life force. So your blade is draining it and then giving it to you. So you hit someone. Now this is only one per recoup, so you can only do it every so often. But it essentially allows you to drain, as it says, a number of hit points from an equal to, again, we have our spirit scaling, and then you regain that much HP as you hit. Then, of course, if you're bloodied, so if you're under 50% HP, I think that's right, you regain twice as many hit points. So it really helps the lower you are using it.
Yeah.
That's one. And if any of these are terribly broken, please interrupt me and go like, dude, you need to shut up. So next one is Impossible Design, which just plays on the stupidly huge weapon trope and just lets you wield a two-handed weapon one-handed.
Okay, so it needs to say gains the one-handed property if that's the intent.
Yes.
Because right now it just loses that and then it's just like floating.
It's
like
yeah. Okay, that's great. I still prefer the gravity weapon that we just created, which loses that property. Words. Should we have one-handed like replacing the two-handed weapon if it possesses?
Yeah, or here, I'll just add it. Loses the two-handed. I've never done that before. I pronounced the W in two. Loses the two-handed property.
Yay!
And it gains the oni-handed property.
Nice. Why do we lose like 50 IQ points when we're streaming? Was that actual? Okay, so yeah, you've got that one as your first one. Then you have Quick, which it makes knife wielders probably so excited. You can just jab someone with a knife 500 times.
Yeah, oh, man.
Just
and
prison shank.
Why are we not doing like the floaty no hands thing? Because that's a legacy artifact already in the game. So like, that's assuming that you can at some point find a way to merge your spirit into like a weapon that you have, you could potentially like min-max or like combine those to get that. Maybe for a capstone, I'm not sure what your capstone ideas are, but maybe we could add a a la carte style floaty weapon at that point. But definitely some investment before we get there. From 2 to 1, from 1 to 0. But let's not. Yeah, well, let's not just sublimate from solid to gas. Let's like have a progression.
Okay. So then we've got that Quick one, which is just, murder knife if you really want to go full prison shank. Searing, I'm not sure if this works, but essentially it like rips through armor at this point. So your weapon, I have it as it reduces a creature's AR by 2 for this weapon reduces, for its attacks. Kind of weirdly written. I wasn't sure how to say this exactly. But essentially what I wanted it to do is like just make it easier to hit someone by breaking through armor if they were wearing it. So that doesn't work necessarily, like kind of talking it through. I think what I would like it to do is ignore up to 2 points gained to AR from armor or something like that. Does that work, Nathan, do you think?
Sorry, I was distracted by Aurora's idea of reducing a standing longbow from two-handed to one-handed. Which,
you know what? It's a magic weapon, man. Like figure it out.
I justify that by saying like if you've got the ammunition, then the spirit within the longbow is pulling it for you. You just have to hold it.
Yeah, 2 hands come out. And they just start
right. Yeah. Sorry. So we're on searing now.
Searing. We moved on to searing, which I just wanted to make sure was reasonable.
So specifically, as I'm reading it, is the intent that the weapon, could you word that
is kind of the way it's supposed to work.
So could you word that as okay, well it definitely needs like a recharge. Do all of these have a recharge or
no,
some of
actually,
them don't,
so very
which is
few
fine.
do, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. This one needs one.
Okay.
Because otherwise you could reword that based on mathematically what's happening there. You could reword that as this weapon just gains an extra +2 to hit.
Right.
So, and that's fine. I wouldn't mind adding something as simple as that. Or,
Okay.
I mean, so because it says for its attacks, it looks like it's only for this weapon. It's not like you're physically chipping their armor off.
Yeah, it only counts for this weapon, as it kind of just starts bypassing it.
Yeah, so just like you gain an extra +2 to attack and hits for X amount of time, 30 seconds, 1 minute, once per rest. 1 minute once per rest is probably what I would do with that.
Sorry, so you gain a +2 bonus, right?
Yeah. +2 bonus to attack rolls.
Oh man, +2 bonus to attack rolls. Just that's it for 1 minute.
Yeah.
And you want once per rest, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because like that's substantial. Because especially with the amount of pluses we've already got in this track, by late game, that's like a +16 to hit.
I'm gonna take you out. You know what? That works for me. So it's just a very accurate weapon at that point. Okay, cool.
It looks like you edited your outline doc because I don't see it showing up here.
Oh, right. That makes sense as to why. Because I'm going back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
Cool. Whatever. Yeah. So we're gonna stick with that copy paste sort of thing. Because I was typing, I was asking this question.
That looks good.
Oh man! All right, next up we have siphoning. So this one is essentially the same as the HP one, only it functions for SP. So we're actually going to get into that. We're going to go on the side branch here a little bit, talking about spells and all that kind of stuff. So you do get access to spells via this track as well. So that would play in if you were going kind of that direction, giving you more of a regain capability.
Mm-hmm.
And then so lastly,
essentially right now we're looking at like the more martial side of this, and then there's also going to be the magical side of this that we're going to look at.
Yeah, we're gonna, as soon as we finish this one, which we're almost done, we're gonna switch over to that version of it. So that's what we have right now. And then lastly, spirited. Now this one again might be a little bit too strong because of added damage, but this one would really play into the more caster side of this. If you wanted to focus more on your casting aspect with a weapon that did damage, would be able to add essentially another stat to your damage roll as far as this goes. Now, because you're a warrior, this was kind of designed with the intent of these stats probably aren't going to be crazy high for you, or your attributes rather, so it wouldn't be adding too much, but it does open a lot of capability to min-max and kind of go a little nuts with that.
Yeah, I mean, in the MythCraft system, you're able to scale your abilities a lot more than in D&D. I think this is too powerful as written, and we can talk about some ways to break it down in a minute. But like design-wise, we removed proficiencies entirely.
Right.
So the scaling of the attributes accounts for both. It accounts for both your like strength getting higher and your proficiency bonus getting higher. So that said, like you get an extra attribute point every time you level up. By the time you're level 30, you'd have around 34 attribute points. The cap is...
So this would be very easy to blow out of the water, so to speak.
Yeah, like usually it's safe to assume that if someone is going on a specific track, they're going to max both their primary and their secondary and maybe their tertiary attribute by the time they're done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I like the idea. What I might... part of this comes down to playtesting, right? Like how much does it trivialize threats? What I think this needs is like a recharge or... I
actually think, you know what, I think it needs to just be entirely changed. I think that the extra damage is like looking at it, because sometimes when you're just drafting and seeing what works and what doesn't. I don't think this track, I don't think it needs it at all. I think it's kind of a superfluous ability, and either it needs to be changed or just deleted. That's my straight up input on it, as far as the self-edit goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's already 5 other options, and you only get 1 when you take this. Yeah, I think that's fine. We can scrap
it. So let's knock it out, and of course, if any more inspiration comes, we can go back and always add to it.
Yeah.
So then this is actually going to cap out the imbued blade version here with our last imbued blade, which has a requisite. Very simple. Hold on. So you have your up to your +3 attack and damage, very much your matching kind of zealot check that does that. And you start gaining one use of the ability that you grabbed. So your ability to like explode and do your whirling dervish, explosive burst, and all those. You gain one of those back on a recoup. So you can kind of continue to do that as you level up. Now this does require 12 talents, and it's kind of your end of this track as far as it goes, because your blade is kind of maxed out power-wise.
Okay, if this is the end of this track, there'll be a magical, like, caster-focused end that kind of is the foil to it?
Yeah, so it's going to have another end. So this is just the branch of this particular track. And of course, this doesn't have the capstone in it right now. So
yeah,
so
like,
let's...
What would it look like if we made this into the capstone?
So I intended to have this be the last one, or the penultimate one, right? And then you jump onto the capstone as far as that goes. So the capstone wouldn't enhance your damage or attacks with this at all. It would be more focused on kind of some capabilities, which I actually don't have the capstone done. So that's going to be a fun little thing that we can kind of do.
Okay, sounds good.
In the moment.
Let's keep like kind of a note here that this looks like it could be a good capstone if we expand it and add a couple other things to it. Obviously changing its prereq, but let's see what other ideas we come up with for a capstone before we get there.
Let's have that one there. Okay, so let's go down to the next series of talents. So this is where, and this branches right off of where we have Curseblade off of that. So instead of going down the weapon, the attacking, enhancing your blade, now you're dealing with the spirit itself in this particular branch that you have. Now, this is the most shaky I've been as far as design goes, because the magic there's just a lot to consume as far as that goes in. So I'm trying to like ease my way into not making sure I'm not designing something that's like going to absolutely obliterate everyone around them. So instead of sorry, on the blade version, this still has the prerequisite of just Curseblade. So you can take this as essentially your 4th talent, right?
Yes.
So you would have Awakened Spirit. Now, what this does is it gets you right into spellcasting after you've kind of gone down that warrior thing for just a little bit. So this actually gives you a magic entry talent, and that magic entry talent is based off of what you chose before, your arcane, your primal, or occult power, or rather talent. Spirit tag. I'll get the right word eventually. Yeah. So, and that kind of puts you down that path. So if you have an arcane spirit, obviously you would probably cast arcane spells off of it, right? So it makes a little bit of sense as far as that goes. And here is where we start seeing that curse magic tag explained. So every talent that you take as far as if it has the curse magic tag, counts to actually kind of start scaling your magic power up as far.
All right. That offers a ton of like flexibility. It offers a lot of options with 3 different sources. Each one could give you different abilities. So, and obviously, like your Curseblade tag is what increases your power. So I was looking back at some of the others because you mentioned to keep an eye out for that. So there's other abilities on the martial side that could augment this.
All they do is they would just add some power.
Right. I'm sorry, is it just power or is it also
power?
Spell?
So
got
all
it.
those
Okay.
magic things,
it's kind of like the zealot as a whole. Where your divine power improves, but your spell points don't. Okay. Great. That answers my question then, because I saw one that had curse magic and repeatable, and I was thinking about getting that.
I think that is actually a typo. I didn't mean to actually have repeatable.
Okay. Easy fix then. I assumed it would just up the number of times you could do it per day, but that's fine.
If that's something that you think would add to the ability, I'd be fine with that. The idea is that you can turn it into something and something back. But yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to like spend a talent on this, I think it might make sense to just be able to go back and like do it.
Yeah, I don't mind leaving repeatable in there. I think that's fine. Okay.
So I was working with somebody else on something.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a note. I will fix that wording in a little bit.
Yeah,
we'll just keep moving.
This is not the final draft version, right? So we can actually, when you can focus on like what's in front of you and not be like, oh, it's typing and there are people.
Right. All right, yeah. So we've got the Awakened Spirit, which again could be the 4th talent that you take, or you could take it at level 4.
Yeah, and then you can,
right.
so you can always come back and take it whenever you want.
Yep.
So now we're looking at kind of starting to define your spirit a bit more with Awakened Spirit too. And so what we're looking at here is you get to add another tag to your actual spirit, which helps with your other combat abilities. So you got a little bit of synergy between these two. So like obviously instead of just occult creatures, you can also target occult fiend creatures. So that adds that tag, kind of developing them a little bit further. And it gives you a bit of a bone here as far as damage goes. Now, some of these I wasn't totally sure on. The resist X, I think is a pretty simple, just kind of like hey, you get like a cool thing for taking this, enjoy. Or you get better at dealing with this particular aspect of it. I think those are easy. Now, the DR from cold, corrosive fire, lightning damage. I'm a big fan of stuff like that, of just being like, hey, like it's not going to absorb everything, but it's going to give me just maybe a few extra hit points to stay up when I need it. The Fey one I was a little bit lost on. I like the idea of being immune to like the kind of whims and whimsical nature of Fey. I don't know if that worked necessarily or was like too strong as far as that goes with the compared to the other abilities.
Yeah, I do think it's too strong compared to the other abilities. I think Charmed is the right way to go with Fey, but I would just do a... So, looking at these, I would just do Resist to Charmed, because Resist increases your defenses. It's not like the same mechanic as in 5th edition.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to think of the right number because I'm weighing like how often you might get charmed versus how often you might get targeted by divine or occult magic.
Exactly, because it's a very specific like condition.
Yeah.
It's a huge one when it occurs, but it has to be very unique to the situation.
Right. So taking it with that in mind, I think Resist 5 or Resist. Yeah, I think Resist 5 is kind of the right move there.
Yeah, so a huge boost, but more specific.
Right. And great in a vampire-themed campaign. So it's going to work very well for Veil of the Eternal Night.
Very true. It's like everybody's doing what he wants and says like, dude, I'm good. Like, no thanks.
Yes. Now, damage reduction in MythCraft is the inverse of in in 5th edition it's just resist. So it's just like you have whatever you would take. Currently... so the way it would work, I'm just gonna scratch pad here a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. Everyone sit down for your lesson.
Yeah. If this were written on a monster stat block, it would mean it reduces damage by 5 unless it is cold. Cold is what overrides the damage reduction.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now I'm in agreement with you on what the ability should do here. It just needs to be reworded a little bit. So like choose one of these types of damage.
Choice. Thank you.
Choice a damage.
Yeah, choice and damage.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that way, it's like it's more like traditional TTRPG damage reduction. It's just like you pick a type and you take less of it. I am a fan of 4th edition. I know most people are not. I played the first character that I played 0 to hero. He became obsessed with just collecting any kind of trinket that would give him damage reduction against a specific type of damage. So whenever I would go to game conventions and play with this character, and whenever a dungeon master would deal damage to me, I'd be like, all right, what type? And then I would flip through all of my different items to find out how much I reduced it. All right, so yeah, I really like that ability.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you have the good old-fashioned immortal by damage. All right, so then we've got that, so it gives you a little bit more of your focus on your spirit. Next up, we've got the same thing. So this just goes down the Awakened Spirit branch, essentially. So what we're looking at here, this gives you a little bit of extra spell work to deal with without having to go outside of the Curseblade. So it'll count as a Curseblade talent. The important thing about this one, and this is where I was like, okay, I'm just going to see what I can get away with or what works as far as the system goes and like kind of shotgun it. So this one, you get more spells, which is just always nice to have because as a progressive caster, obviously you want more spells. But this lets you choose some of those spells. And instead of using spell points for them, you get to murder yourself and use your HP as your SP for these particular spells. So with this kind of, it rides the line of balance a little bit, obviously, because it gives you a huge pool of scaling, but also, whenever you deal damage to yourself, it's not exactly a good thing. So it gives you a little bit more of that. And as a warrior, you're probably not going to have nearly as many spell points available to you as any other spellcasting class.
Right.
So this would let you kind of make up for that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That is on its face not unbalanced, and playtesting will reveal further, like as people dig in and find like ways to break it.
Yeah, because it would let you take probably a really high, a very high cost spell and use that. But again, of course, you're trading straight up hit points for that. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, a way to limit that could be like you can only learn spells that cost a certain number of spell points, or a number of spell points that you actually have. So you might only have 10 or 15 spell points by this point, so that limits what you can do.
Okay.
But let's not put that on paper yet. Let's see how it goes. Yeah.
See who breaks it terribly.
Who like dumps all of their points into endurance and it learns Meteor Storm and destroys the moon.
Obliterating things like, I'm good, guys. What's up? I'm level 5.
Right. Right.
Okay. Yeah. That'll be a good time. This one also has an extra bit of caveat. If you do reduce yourself to 0 hit points using this, you immediately gain 2 death points.
Yeah, that's
so yeah, it gives you a little bit of a reason to be careful when you're at lower hit points.
Yeah. I'm going to make a note about that potential caveat here real quick. And Squishy Mishy, thank you for joining. I'll do a quick rundown of what we've come up with once we get through like the whole drafting process. So we'll recap everything at the end for you.
Okay.
Pause. You can go ahead and keep going. I'm just going to make this note.
Yeah, all good. Next up, we're back to the Awakened Spirit again. So that we're going to focus more on, so this kind of goes back and forth between spells and of course the tag interactions. So yeah, Awakened Spirit 4 kind of deals with giving you a little bit of extra utility here. So based on your previous tag that you've selected, you get new features on everything. So the first thing you get on any of these is some skill points, kind of throwing the warrior a bit of a bone, maybe getting you to those extra skill points you've been needing for a little while. But it lets you choose, based on the personality of your spirit, some skills you might be better with. So Celestial, get influence and knowledge tag skills. Eldritch, you're into knowledge and crafting, all the way down to Fae, which I love. It gives you luck or performance, so you can just be lucky with your Fae imbuing here.
Yeah.
Celestial, then, each of them has their own specific ability on how they interact with the spirit and kind of something they would do for you. The Celestial, for instance, lets you spend 2 AP when you hit a creature to make all of your damage radiant. And deal additional damage equal to something that I know is way too high right now. So we're going to immediately do that. Talk about that's balanced. So this it basically gives you a smite as far as that goes. So you can just like put everything you into murdering something. You can only do it 2 times per rest. But it does give you like a little bit of an extra, hey, I need to have like something up my sleeve as far as damage goes. The Eldritch one I actually really like because it makes you better with your spell casting, which what you would expect of something that, Eldritch Arcane, which essentially you just spend 2 AP to ignore resistance to a creature that may have against that spell. So you can just like cast your spells freely and not worry about getting totally obliterated because you don't have a high enough casting stat.
Yeah.
Moving on to Elemental. This just allows you to... that's going to need a serious rewrite here.
It gives you DR against it.
Yeah. It's you ignore resistance for the damage type. We can just do that, I think. So the way I wrote this essentially is if you're doing that specific type of damage, you're just going to be able to always rely on it. So it unless they're immune, of course, but it'll just give you kind of like a passive ability to be able to actively constantly do that. So that'll impact your spells. It'll impact your attacks. So I think that gives you just a little bit of a leg up, and maybe isn't such a powerful thing that it needs a ability on there, but you're about to interrupt. So please go ahead.
So if my Curseblade spirit gives me lets me reduce lightning damage when I take it, then this would allow me to ignore or resist lightning.
Yes, basically
Okay.
that. So yeah, so you kind of like you lean into an element and you get really good at that specific element.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is Fae, which is of course our favorite little mischievous creatures as far as we go.
Our
So
favorite.
this one, this is when you slap someone, you can then charm them. Is how this kind of comes down to.
Yeah.
Just like every Fae would dream of. So you do damage. You get to make an extra. And I put the caveat of making an additional magic attack, so it actually needs to hit them before it goes into play, because just auto charm can be way too strong. And then on a hit, it's charmed by you for 1 minute or until they take damage. So when that one player everybody hates at your table follows your attack up with just enough damage, you can get pissed at them. And then finally, we have our good old Fiend, which is all about being fiendish. You get your skill points, and then same thing as above with Fae. You get to make a special attack, only this time you get to knock them on their ass. Now, this one is a little bit less strong than I think the other abilities that we have access, so I kind of limited or gave it 2 per recoup, which I wasn't sure if that was too much. But it basically is just, hey, I'm knocking you down. I'm Sauroning you across the field.
Right. I mean, it's also an extra AP each time you do it. I don't know if that even needs a recharge. The other ones do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't mind if they're asymmetrical in that way. Like if this one doesn't have a charge. Elemental doesn't have a recharge because it's very circumstantial. That's fine. Yeah, we can go ahead and remove that. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of that.
Testing.
I love that. You can swing and just knock everybody down in a row.
Yeah.
Okay. And then of course we have our last Awakened Spirit talent as far as this goes. Sorry, 1 second. Now, this does mark 20 talents as far as this track goes. So this is kind of why I stopped here, because I'm like, I'm getting a little bit aggressive on extra abilities here as far as the outline goes. So what you're looking at here is this kind of just improves your ability to land spells. Now, this one is both awesome and dangerous and terrible at the same time. So this allows you to choose 2 additional spells that you can apply to using your life force to cast, so your HP instead of SP. Now, this one, though, what it does is it allows you to double the damage you've dealt to yourself to make sure that the attacks automatically land. So you don't have to worry about them missing, but you're killing yourself in order to do it. So whoever took their meteor spell and is going to break the game will, in fact, be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, but you get to do it once, and you're probably on the ground.
Yep. Yeah, I was like, oh, I can abuse that, and then I saw it does extra death points. I would up this 4 death points instead of 2. That would take the average person halfway to dead. Provided that they go all in on it. Like, if you're playing like the kind of min-max like pedal to the metal kind of character, this will take you halfway to dead. If you're playing a very calculating character, you will only use this when it takes you down to 2 hit points, so you avoid those final death points. Yeah, either way works, but that does prevent like the meteor storm from wiping out a continent.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna wipe out something. Just alongside it, which I'm down with. It's actually one of my favorite mechanics, and it's ETBRG I'll ever add. Will be you die, but so does that.
Yeah.
It's like, you get to do it. Like, we're good. It's a mutual destruction pack over here.
Right.
So as far as the Curseblade goes at this point, so that's everything that I have outlined or drafted up as far as this goes, because it was getting into 20 talents, and that also has the unfortunate thing, both the fortunate and unfortunate thing, is the warrior is very easy to dip into other tracks, right? As far as the offense track, the defensive track, maybe you want to dual wield or get better at dual wielding. So I actually tried to stay away from replicating anything from those particular tracks, so that if you wanted to, you could take a dip into one of those and kind of focus between the two. So I actually didn't want to inundate this particular track with too many, like, I'm going to take every single talent I have in this, because again, it just feels like the nature of the warrior to be more versatile in the way they do things. So that's kind of where I stopped it. Now, that's also a question of, hey, like, does this feel like it needs a bit more? Or does it need like a few extra things to really give it more of a personality? Or does it need to reap the souls of creatures with the same tag and do some stuff with that? So it's kind of, those are the kind of like ending outline questions as far as that goes.
Yeah, so help me visualize a little bit. So we've got like the two major categories. There's like the more martial-ish and the more magic-ish, just to put it like in very broad terms. Do they each have 10 talents, or is one larger than the other right now?
No, so the martial blade side is much, much larger. So I think you have, what, 5 of these, and then you have 15 on the other side.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that you, again, the curse magic is also on that side as well. But you can kind of, between these two, you can lean into more of the spell casting, even by going into the Curseblade, right? Because there's a couple abilities in there that are focused more towards like spellcasters doing one thing or the other.
Okay.
So you're supposed to kind of, it's almost kind of like a deceptive linear track where you want to take everything from both with very minor kind of like deviations, but they're just
different
sections.
Like, just pure gameplay strategy wise, this doesn't account for any like roleplay or story development, but like it seems more in your, it seems like it would behoove you to start with the magic side, so that the curse magic talents from the martial side allow you to improve what you've already gotten from the magic side.
Yeah, I think like if you were playing that direction of like, hey, I'm very calculated in what abilities I take, you would, the first thing you do is take Awakened Spirit, like straight up, right off the mark, get that spellcasting talent, and then you could kind of go to either direction from there.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with, because again, it leaves you open to shift into more of the warrior fighting style. So if you wanted to be more of a straight up murder dual wielder using both the curse blade and your ability to dual wield that curse blade, sure, you could focus on that. Or you could shift to more like the command route.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got 20 talents. We've got a set of 5 like magic key talents. We've got a set of 15 more martial talents. Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier. The one thing that's like, it's there from a roleplay perspective, but we could potentially add more talents to flesh out like the mechanical perspective. That being the like getting to know your spirit better, helping or learning how to fight other things like it. I imagine it would, depending on what your MC does, I guess this is partially up to your table. Like if the spirit wants to help you kill other things, or if that's tension, if it's like, no, don't kill other things like me. I don't know if there's like fruit there for more talents or not.
I think that what it could do is essentially, if we wanted to add, say, another 4 or 5 talents to kind of round it out, you would just put them into the Awakened Spirit kind of track. So you have Awakened Spirit 1 through 5. So what you could do is you could split off of the first Awakened Spirit and then kind of like lean into the tags a little bit more, or even force you to take Awakened Spirit 2, because that gives you your secondary tag.
Yeah.
And then branch off from there and have more spirit kind of interactions, which would give you like, hey, you have advantages against this type, or you have advantages versus types it typically like knows how to take out. Like if you're Fiend, you'd be really good against Celestial, something along those lines. Or just empowering it in utility abilities rather than just all combat spells.
Yeah, I think that's the two things I would do, is like your based on the kind of spirit you have, you almost have a like a ranger's like favorite enemy kind of thing. Maybe with more damage, maybe with just like knowledge about it, skill checks, that kind of thing. And then some kind of utility, whether that's like learning rituals from the primal or occult or arcane source based on what you selected. Yeah, I think a few talents after Awakened Spirit 2 would be the move there.
More talents.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where we've been going for about 90 minutes, so let's not try to like ideate those right now. For our last thing here, I think let's figure out a good capstone or two. Either like a good central one that ties everything together, or like a good martial capstone and a good like spirity capstone. And just to like let that percolate for a minute, for Squishy and for anyone else who joined late, I'll do a quick kind of rundown of what we've got so far. So starting with the smaller side, which is the side that we just discussed, there's Awakened Spirit 1 through 5, and that lets you, well, first, top level conceptually, you've got a spirit that lives in a weapon, and it gives you different abilities like through the weapon, through fighting with the weapon, and just through like casting magic that the spirit might gift to you or allow you to access. So you choose a magic source out of arcane, primal, or occult, and that's like the nature of the spirit. Awakened Spirit allows you to better define the spirit, whether it's celestial, fey, fiend, etc. And those different categorizations allow you different abilities. Celestial gives you a divine smite, for example. Fiend lets you, I believe you turned Sauron into into a verb. It allows you to Sauron people across the room. And so that's kind of what we're looking at from the Awakened Spirit track. From the Imbued Blade track, that's the other thing. So here's like the very first talent. Because when you enter into a class track in MythCraft, you've got one talent that you start with, and then from there it often splits. Sometimes it's just a straight line. This one splits. So that's one branch off from Curseblade. The other branch off from Curseblade is Imbued Blade, Spirit Blade, etc. I'll get there in a second. The Curseblade just gives you your base, like you've got the spirit, it lives in a weapon. It's called Curseblade because that sounds cool. It doesn't have to be a blade. It could be a maul. It could be it starts out as a melee weapon, but eventually it could be a ranged weapon. If you would still have to carry around your own ammunition. But as Aurora pointed out earlier, there is a way for you to have a one-handed standing longbow using this build. Is that broken? I don't think so, because it's a lot of talent points to get there. But if it consistently shows up that you can just like, I mean, it does allow you a massive range, like a 1,000-foot range to just snipe a vampire. So over the course of the more martial Curseblade talents, you can improve how your weapon works. So you can here's another way to soar on someone. You can overbear them and just knock them prone more. You can give reach to your weapon. You can do the Thor thing and make your two-handed greatsword throwable. And then progressing down the martial track, you like get the standard kind of make it more magic-y, give it the +1 to attack and damage. Deal additional damage based on the type of spirit that is in your blade or in your weapon. I'm just kind of highlighting. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing because this will be recorded. So if you want to see on a granular level, just go back and rewatch it. Speed us up, make us sound like chipmunks, whatever you want to do. Again, just improvements to attack and damage. Some really fun stuff with morphing. Morphing, not morphine. That would be the Plague Doctor. You can change the nature of your weapon. Turn your throw the Zweihander and then turn it into a javelin into like a pike as it returns and skewers someone behind you. This morphing ability starts out as something you can only do ritualistically, like while you're recouping, for example. Eventually, I think there's an ability where you can do it for 4 AP, if memory serves.
Leader down.
Okay, nice. And there it is. So for 4 AP, you can do that. And then just some really fun, like, thematic, flavorful visuals that give you different kinds of AoE attacks. So you've got like a radius attack or a cone attack or a line attack that let you flavor that however you want. And we talked about some fun ways that you can flavor that. Gain some especially powerful abilities based on like what kind of weapon you have. So, looks like that one is actually based more on the type of spirit living within you. Yeah, so you get kind of like a Nosferatu ability, like drain someone's health when you hit them, and then you restore yourself. And that brings us down to the capstones. So what do you have for us there?
Nothing right now. Just essentially an easy peasy. So I didn't actually outline this intentionally. I thought this would be kind of fun if there were people watching to get some like what do you guys think would be a cool capstone? This is not me because I don't have any ideas. I just want to get some collaboration. As far as like, what would you like to see? Like if you're playing this kind of class and you get to the end of it, obviously we're more focused on murder at this point with the martial. But if this is something you've been playing the entire time, is this something you'd like to see as, hey, it's like a combination of, I want like to merge my spellcasting and my martial capabilities into one. You know, I want to be like a spellblade, or I would like this to be entirely based around coming to an accord with the spirit in my blade and kind of either merging with it or sharing some of its capabilities. This could even change you as its wielder, you know, maybe gaining some kind of feature that brings you closer to your spirit as far as that goes. So based on the tags that you've taken previously, you could actually inherit some of those tags yourself, like change your creature type. Yeah, so that's the question I have for you guys. If there's anything in particular. Yeah, we've got.
Have your weapon possess someone else's weapon.
Beat them in the face with it.
Stop hitting yourself.
So what you doing, bro? You know what? That it might actually be a good idea to have your capstone based off of the tags that you have, right? So if you've chosen a fey creature, you get like a mischief capability that allows you to possess somebody's weapon and beat them in the face with it, which you could really merge with the Dark Jester that's coming out as well, and just have the most terrifying possessing sword ever.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So that would mean that your capstone requires awakened weapon too, because that's what gives you the extra.
I'm also kind of down with that because it kind of forces you into Okay, so I think we've got a couple of people interaction with the spirit. Yeah, absolutely. Because that kind of creates that role-playing opportunity, right? Where you're yelling at your sword and your sword is like yelling back, but nobody can hear it.
Yeah. I mean, a really easy one is just like you gain the tags that your spirit has. And that's just a passive, but it causes all of these like rippling interactions with spells and with like other monsters.
Okay. So what I had here initially was to cite the random requirements, which will probably not make it past playtesting, but I mean, you know what? I'm going to keep it there for now.
They're there for now.
If anyone can do that, I will Venmo you $10 because that's impressive. As far as this goes, so I just have the flavor here. Like you're striking kind of an amicable accord with the spirit, or you're entirely breaking it and kind of making it your own. Yeah, so merging with it and becoming a demi-fae, demi-fiend. Yeah, that's exactly something. I think that's the direction it's kind of going to go in right now. Squishy, for bringing that up. Merging sounds really cool. I'm feeling like people like the merging concept. I think it's the way to go. So, okay, let's stick with that. So for those of you, again, looking to like design your own things or kind of figure that out, talking things through, even with just random people or whoever you have around or someone you really like designing with or someone you trust, can be huge to get you go in the right direction as far as that goes. So I always recommend having some kind of sounding board just to at least get your thoughts out loud. Just like reading something out loud or saying something out loud is entirely different than actually just having your head and even writing it on the page. Okay, so right now we've got just that. I don't have very much. So I think what we're going on from here is we're trying to find a way to like merge with your spirit. So you're merging your wills into one. Now, as far as what this is going to actually do, why it's so hard to do this, talking it out and actually having people there as opposed to just like writing it in my dark corner. Yeah, so let's see. you gain. Oh, do you want to do like? Would this work? Would like merging it and becoming like a demi-fiend or demi-fae, or like gaining the tag of your Curseblade? Is that something that we can make work?
Gaining the tag, I think, is a great starting point. So you get like the
Okay.
arcane, occult, primal tag, and you would get like whichever one of those you picked, and you would also get the tag you picked from Awakened Blade 2. Higher defenses, I think, is a really good idea, Dante's Virgil. And Kyle also mentioned getting like a higher fear threshold or something. I hesitate on that one with this class because that would be the first time that we've mentioned fear for this class track. And I want like we already have some really cool fear interactions on some of the other subclasses that are going to be coming out. I would rather focus on fear with the classes that already mention it, just so that like if you're trying to play a non-Veil of the Eternal Night game and you want to use a certain subclass or class track from Veil of the Eternal Night, I want to be sure there's like a good balance of some subclasses that don't mention fear at all, so that you can easily just take it and run with it in a different setting.
Yeah, I think for this can easily be put into any sort of campaign set, right? Like it's kind of designed to be a little bit more vague in its approaches, because then if you want to make an arcane, what was that? An arcane eldritch spirit, it might not mesh as much as Veil for that one.
Yeah, they right. Those both definitely exist in Veil, but they're not like the focus, right? Like occult is a lot more prominent, and eldritch is not as prominent as like fiends and undead, as far as like the horrific creatures go. So yeah, we're trying to strike a balance of like with Harker's Guide, like trying to find subclasses that fit exactly into Veil of the Eternal Night, like the what's one that ties a lot closer, like the Hellbound Paladin. That one has some built-in lore that like works in other games, but ties very specifically into some Veil lore.
Right.
Same with like the Hellcrafter, right? Like you could technically play that wherever, but it's specifically written for Veil of the Eternal Night and with stuff that is going on in that campaign.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and look at here as far as capstones go. So right now we've got you gain tags. You gain those tags, so you subsume them as well. And then you get unique abilities based on what you've chosen in the past. So the way that I like to do this is kind of separate things out a little bit. And we're going to just copy pasting because that's what we should do. Just a little bit of time. Don't type everything out. So you have Arcane, Primal, and Occult is your first thing. And then, of course, you have Celestial, Eldritch, Elemental, Fey, and Fiend for your additional tags. So the way that I see this working initially, of course, this can change, is that you get one instance of an ability based off of your initial tag for the spirit. So your Arcane, Primal, Occult, and then you gain a secondary ability that kind of plays off of the other ones that you may have gotten from Awakened Spirit based off of that secondary tag as well.
So, yeah, that makes sense. So the creature tags have had like specific abilities from some of those previous talents. The Arcane, Primal, and Occult have not as much, other than obviously like what kind of magic you can cast. So I don't know, like there were some ideas about increasing your defenses or something along those lines. That to me would make a lot of sense with the magic tags, because that's like a nice passive that you would get.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of, we can fit it into that, right? So Arcane obviously would boost your logic, right? Your LOG or intelligence defense.
Yeah, right.
So as far as this goes, this is a capstone, right? So these are like a big deal. I think what would be to word a defense bonus against this? Would it just be like resist, or would you have, because I think this is a teachable moment as far as design is concerned. What would you, if you were just adding X to defense, how would you word that?
So it's a capstone. It can do some crazy things. I would just say your logic, your log increases by +2. Just like a passive, so it just gets better.
Passive bonus. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just straight up, hey, you're really good at not getting screwed up, right? At this point, obviously, your intelligence is what you've been focusing on, so that's probably going to be behind. So we can do that with all these and make it really easy as far as this bonus goes. And who doesn't like a passive stat bonus?
Especially if you have gone out of your way to get, like, for primal magic, if you have the impulse talents, then you can use your anticipation in place of your armor rating. So that's a fun.
Yeah, that's huge. Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck hitting me, dude. I'm over here.
Right. I would not do that in a talent within the stack. But I think it's fine for a couple reasons. One, it's a capstone. Two, in order for you to get that like huge combo and use your anticipation instead of your armor rating, it's a 3 talent investment, because the impulse talent gates it at like to a maximum of 14, to a maximum of 18, and then indefinite. Right. So you've got to take a couple before you can get there.
So I mean, and that's totally, because at that point you're such a high level probably that like who cares? Right. You know, things are killing you in 2 hits, you're killing them in 1 hit. Like you're nuking each other constantly. All right, so we have a very easy fix for that Arcane Primal, and of course this can merge into the fact that you're now playing a celestial character, where before you were just playing a good old human. Let's see here. And then, so here we have these other abilities. So these are where we're probably going to get into more like detailed, specific features, obviously to kind of like interact with what we have previously. So if we look at our previous Awakened Spirits, we have some passive, boring stuff at the start, which is for low levels. Yeah, you can have like some visual bonuses. But then we look at the second one. So Celestial, the first thing they do is they're all about smiting, right? So we have our smite capability. So we probably want to lean into doing something with radiant damage at this point. You know what? And I'm kind of down with giving more skill points here.
I was thinking about that as well.
Yeah, just a little bit of a boon here, right? It's just like kind of like adding, giving you a little bit of extra utility. Okay, so let's. Sorry, I have this is not my typical work computer, so I have to like between 7 different tabs. Orbital strike. Is that nuclear launch detected? Is that what we're going for here?
Divine nuke.
Okay, there we are. Right. So another 4 skill points, probably that seems to be kind of the you get skill points and something else.
Yeah, I mean that's in keeping with your previous talents with these guys.
So it's like a little bit of like here you go, enjoy that.
Yeah.
A little bit of extra love there. So at this point, I mean, I think a nuke for a Celestial sounds hilarious. And can do a lot, but that might be a little bit too much. So either we could do along the lines of something like, hey, now you get some extra. Oh, thank you for doing that. Well,
yeah, I got you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so instead of, because we already have the smite as far as that goes, that's already been factored in. Let's see here. So we're kind of looking at whether we'd like to have just a big old massive. Because the thing with the nuke is that you do get access to spells. And if you really want to nuke things, you can just do that with the spells. So I think it's kind of like a boring option as far as that goes. I think maybe here, maybe let's lean into the spirit a bit more. So if you have the Celestial and maybe you're fighting, you're kind of doing what Celestials do, right? They go out and they're act celestial, a little bit holier than thou. Maybe you can apply either more of your Curseblade abilities to any of the tags, basically, so you can just like always have those passive bonuses active against like a wider array of creatures. Or you can do something like making you more celestial, either giving you access to a celestial form, or some kind of like maybe either flight or resistance to interactions from like certain creature types.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine if you hit someone with your Curseblade weapon. Let's say they have to be bloodied. You hit them, causing a spray of blood to come out, but you've got a celestial being in your blade. Let's say you turn that blood into holy water.
That's very okay. That's interesting. So I love it and I hate it at the same time. So what would holy water do? Like, what would having that much holy water do for you?
So holy water was not in our base MythCraft game, but I've written it for Veil of the Eternal Night. You can consume it, or not drink it, but you can like douse yourself in it to gain I believe it's one of the benefits of one of the lower level potions. It's like shield hit points. It also makes you harder to hit from like fiends and undead because they're like you like shun them. Alternatively, you can like bomb a fiend or undead with it. You can splash it on them and deal radiant damage to them. So I don't know exactly. Like, let's say maybe you hit it, it turns into holy water that you immediately apply to that creature or to a creature that is adjacent to it. So you can choose whether it heals or harms based on how you allocate it.
Okay, yeah. So knowing that about holy water, now I just love it. Yeah. So whenever you hit a creature, probably whenever you deal damage, right?
Probably not whenever. No, probably not whenever. When you hit a creature, and we'll put some kind of limiter on it.
Yeah, I was like, maybe too much, because then you're just like, holy water city. God, that's abusive for a merchant, right? You just get your fiend, you just tie him up, and wow, that's dark. Okay, we're not going there. We're gonna save that for the actual game when it comes up. When you hit a creature, we gotta make this your Curseblade, absolutely, because you can't once you sub another weapon. Your Curseblade. Should you have a damage, like you do X amount of damage? No. Okay. Scoring wounds. Turn. Now let's do a divine wounds because you're a holy person. Oh, this is such a weird thing to word, man.
Yeah.
Like, I can say, well, I'm turning this blood into wine. Turn to holy. Here we're going to go hard to that's how we're going to lean into the vampire aspect, right? Would you be able to choose, or is it just any creature you designate as an enemy?
Sorry, I feel like you cut out there at the end. Would you be able to choose like which effect happens?
Yeah, so like how would you choose this? So is it just anyone within 5 feet gets splashed, and then based on their relation to you, they get an effect, or is it something you would have to like, choose to activate?
I think that's really interesting. I think that depends on how frequently you can use it, because if you're able to just pick and choose, that makes it more powerful. But if it's, on the other hand, if it's always a good thing, like if it always hurts your enemies and always helps your allies, then actually saying that, I like that a lot. Let's say this this hurts your enemies, it helps your allies, and it splashes in a 5-foot radius. So it's both the creature you hit and everyone around them. That makes it more obviously powerful and more obviously like a capstone ability, because that's like where we're at. And then limit it to like X per rest, whatever that might be. Your attribute per rest, like intelligence, wisdom, or intelligence, awareness, or charisma based on your...
Yeah, so it'd be the same, the scaling based on your aforementioned source or your spirit tags. Okay, so we've got Holy Water, which is on a hit, creature gains 1d4 shield HP unless it's a fiend or dead.
Yeah, I copied Holy Water from the playtest document, which is not yet released, so everyone gets a sneak peek of Holy Water as well. But that's down there on the page too for reference.
Was it 1d4 shield HP?
Yeah, I assume you mean any creature you designate as an enemy, right? To damage.
Oh, yeah. No, betrayal! I've been the enemy the entire time. Okay, so what we have here is like whenever you hit a dude with this active, somebody like anything around them is taking radiant damage, and you are gaining shield HP constantly. God, that's awesome. Like you're just constantly getting this like little bit of a buff from your best buddy and your sword who's helping you murder. Right. Okay. So now we have that. Is 1d4 shield? I think that's good because it's constantly happening, right? Every time you make an attack. And shield HP does stack, correct?
Shield HP does not. Shield HP does not stack. I still think it needs some kind of limit. Because that's quite a bit of extra radiant damage.
Yeah, I just hadn't gotten to the limiter yet.
Okay.
So are we going to... So the best limiter, of course, is amount of times you can use it or how active it is. So I think this is going to be an activation kind of thing.
And then it lasts for a duration.
Yeah, and then it's just like most of the other Curseblade stuff. We could tie this to Spirit Blade or Imbued Force. So we could say this ability activates whenever you make use of your Spirit Blade or Imbued Force, because that already has a scaling mechanic. It already has uses, and so it just ties into having those features.
I'm happy with that. I think that's a really good way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. That also encourages you, because you could feasibly get here without taking certain talents, so that encourages you to go back and flesh out the rest.
Exactly.
Of your
take the Curseblade stuff.
Yeah.
So the duration of your Spirit Blade or Imbued. Okay, so that kind of elegantly solves the problem we have of a limiter, right? That kind of gives us a basis that we can use for the others as well. So we already kind of have that figured out as far as that goes. So that's pretty cool. So that gives you like a little bit of a buddy talk with your celestial ally, who is all about murder and having those additional features as well. That we get to use holy water in a cool way. Or the most terrifying way, I suppose. How holy really is that water?
Right.
Oof. Okay, so the nice thing about this, though, is now we have a very like basic form. So again, design thing for anyone who's not designing on the regular. Once you kind of get into the flow of a big ability, especially one like this, once you've done one part of it, the rest of it just starts filling itself out. You get into that design groove. So it can help to spend a little bit more detail work and time figuring out the initial bit so you can get the last bit a little bit faster. Okay. So these are going to have to be as unique as the previous abilities. So let's see. Eldritch, what are you doing originally here? So this is going to, we're going to focus this. We're going to lean into our spells a little bit more. So we already spend AP to ignore any resistance a creature may have to our spells. So I like initially your ability to ignore resistance against your spells. Now only costs 1 AP. That might be too much. I think we'll look at that in a second. But basically what that does is you just are able to use that resistance thing more often with your spells. Let's see. And should we enhance the amount of times you can use it? I think so.
Yep. 1 AP, 2 per recoup might be enough to just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Dante's Virtual Light, not for Eldritch, but I think that's a really good idea for Elemental, allowing you to do different, like, stack the types of damage you do to possibly get around people's resistance.
Yeah, okay.
Or circumvent their vulnerabilities, their immunities.
I really like the Eldritch one. That's cool, because it really focuses your spell use and gives you, like, a little bit of a... Because that's going to be huge. Constantly ignoring resistance just on a recoup. That's a great one. Okay. So let's see. Ignore resistance for damage type from Awakened Spirit 2. So how about let's go. You may choose a second damage type from your Awakened Spirit 2 talent. Okay, so this allows you to. What have we done previously with this? You have DR. This grants.
Yeah, that'll reduce damage when you take that type of damage.
Yep. Damage reduction from the same talent. And what was the suggestion here again?
The suggestion was letting you add The exact wording is letting you add another spell type, so like fire and lightning together. So I assume damage type, not spell type. So like let's say you know how to cast fireball. You can cast like ice fire, and just do
Icy hot.
fire and cold damage in that like area.
Okay.
Potentially allowing like strange interactions with vulnerabilities, with immunity, like if they're immune to fire but they still take cold damage. What we'd have to figure out is it still all of the damage, or is it half and half?
I think I have an idea here. So this grants you damage like the same talent, and you may apply that secondary damage type. Or you may apply either, let's just say either damage type, because you can learn spells of other damage type. Either damage type to that's the fire, a good way to word that. Would it just be attacks or spells? I think it would be attacks and spells.
Yeah, like anything that would do elemental damage.
Yeah, damage times to damage done from attacks and spells. So what this actually does, I think what this would be, is that you would have to have resistance to both of these damage types, or it'd be counted as resistance to neither. Right? So like you have to be able to resist both, or it all just goes through.
I like that. That is unusual for MythCraft, but I think that's fitting for a capstone ability that focuses so heavily on developing your weapon to do this.
Okay. If that creature is counted on having. Okay, so that just lets you just blast right through those elemental resistances, which are pretty common, right? It's very easy to toss that on a boss.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're down to Fae and Fiend. And I like how we said, like, we might go for like 90 to 60 minutes.
Yeah, right.
At this point. Like, no problem. So Fae here, so we've got... I liked the mischievous point from the suggestion. That was
from Maiko, like charming another weapon, and
yeah, I kind of like that. I think we should use that for sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Maiko here. So let's codify that into mechanics though. And so for this one specifically, this would probably be a limited action, right? So you'd have to do this. This would be a per rest because this is going to be really strong. Would you need to make an attack against like a will for this one? Or because you would definitely have some kind of resistance versus both disarming and attacking someone, I would think.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I'm assuming it's typically going to be a non-sentient weapon that gets charmed by the spirit. Let's do like your attack. Like your magic attack, so intelligence, awareness, or charisma based on your source, against the probably against the anticipation of the enemy, so that they can like brace and hold their weapon in place.
Okay, so you reach out to every weapon within 10-foot radius from you. Do we want to AP cost this, like for 4 AP? Because it's going to be AoE, yeah.
Yeah.
Make a magical int. And these are notes for now.
Yeah. You can shorten that, but we can just keep it for the draft.
On a hit. Should they attack themselves? That weapon
I think so. That's just hilarious.
Has the wielder and hit.
I would say just it damages its wielder because like you've already made the attack.
Yeah. damages its wielder using their own damage calculation. So they just beat the crap out of themselves.
Yep.
And we definitely need to give this a use feature here. So something per rest, most likely. So probably I would say, because this is so strong, I'm hesitant to give it half stat per rest, because you could just keep doing it.
Yeah, on the other hand, this varies wildly based on the kinds of enemies that you're fighting, like how powerful it is.
Yeah,
right. So I mean, if you're fighting, let's see, every weapon. I'm just gonna add that so that it still works on like beastly creatures.
Yeah. Okay.
I think a half of a source attribute per rest. I think that's dialed in pretty good. I think at least for playtesting, that's around where I would put it.
Okay then. So we're on Fiend. We're nearing the end here. Now we have gone to the 2-hour limit at this point. Do we have that hard stopping point, or
we've got 5 minutes? We can wrap this up.
Okay. All right. Let's do the Fae real quick, or the Fiend, and this is the one that takes us 3 hours, right? Let's see. Okay, so Fiend, we're going with power, right? We're like leaning into the Sauroning of people. Like whenever you knock. Yeah, let's get rid of that whenever.
Whenever you give someone the Sauron condition.
let's make it. It's got to be a Lord of the Rings game with that, right? What happened to you? I got Sauron, bro. It's not fun.
Right.
You knock a creature prone. Or back at least 5 feet. I take additional. What's the blunt damage? It's just blunt, yeah.
Blunt. Yep.
Yeah. I was like, I said it. I'm like, I know what that is. Additional blunt damage equal to what? Probably not your strength, straight up. One half your strength, or one half your endurance, or.
I like endurance a lot. Yeah, because strength is going to be your main like damage output with this, or dex, or whatever kind of weapon you're using. But endurance, we don't have endurance weapons, so that's a safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a safely clear throwback on there. Yeah, so like every time, so Fiend is all about knocking people down, and now you're just doing it constantly, and like they're taking damage every time you knock them on the ground.
Yeah, and I like that because it's already like we don't need a recharge on that, because the abilities that knock, like you can use to knock people over, are already couched either in recharges or in additional AP spent.
Yeah, so there we go. I mean, I think that's good enough. Like you're just constantly knocking people down, and you're getting that on top of it as well. Now, I think these will play a little bit better, so I can go back and add those Awakened Spirit talents on there as well.
Right.
The only thing we have left to do is what this does at level 30. Which I have no freaking idea. I think
I don't want to do something for each of the different ones at level 30. There needs to be
for
something.
sure not. It's just going to give you like one individual thing. Yeah, that's got to happen. Let's see here. So I don't think playing into defenses is very exciting. I mean, we could just make it easy and go to a stat cap, but that's kind of lame.
Yeah, and there's so many different stats that could be beneficial here. That doesn't feel like the right play.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. I didn't even like it when I said it. Can we do something with our previous? Oh, you know what we could do? We could just play into the properties that we already have. So at level 30, your Curseblade gains one additional advanced property.
There you go. Yeah.
And one base property, just to give you a little bit of a.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so there you go. So you're just like, okay, now I'm stealing everything from you. And now we got it. I think that's nailed it.
Perfect. That's amazing. So that's it, except for the additional
the 4 or 5 on the other side.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this Curseblade stream. Gregory, thank you for putting this on with me.
I survived. I got through it. Oh, God,
you got through it. Yeah, so playtesting for all of our Veil of the Eternal Night subclasses is coming out this Friday. If you're watching this in post, that is Friday, April 12th of 2024. If you're watching it in post, it's probably already out. So go grab some playtest content. We've got 17 subclasses. We've got about 20 monsters we're releasing as part of the playtest. 15 or so spells, rituals, magic stuff. This is for both MythCraft and 5th edition of D&D. The version we did here obviously is MythCraft, but there will be an equivalent that is more, I mean, it's a subclass, so it's not going to have as many options, but it's going to have the same flavor, the same like basic ideas built into it. Yeah, thanks again. I am Nathan. I think everyone here knows me, but I'm Nathan. I'm the lead game designer for MythCraft, and joined by Gregory, one of our writers on the MythCraft development team, and the author of The Soul of Chaos, Litanies of the Lost Star, Book 1.
Nailed it. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We will see you soon.
Adios.